Have you ever heard of a sleepy little town by the name of Springfield? It used to not be so sleepy once. It was home to many a unique, colourful character that had so many stories to tell. The tavern was vibrant and full. The school was buzzing with the new generation. There was a convenience store once. There was a pretty hard-working immigrant man there, doing everything to support his family. But I haven't seen him in a while. I hope he's doing well. What's that? You haven't heard of him? Well, shame, but understandable. Oh, don't look so confused, friend. Rumor has it that a new shop opened up in Springfield. Well, opening tomorrow. I don't know if it's better than the Quickie Mart. I guess you'll have to find out. See that building on Main Street, where it used to be? The one with the green canopy. It's called Resentful Things. Now just what the dog does that mean? I don't know, but there's a certain ring to it nonetheless. Now you see that boy walking there? The one that's walking his bike and got that look on his face like he's having the sweetest daydream of how things used to be. Keep an eye on him, friend. I think he knows someone who's going to get things started. Oh hey, I haven't seen that face in a while. Actually, I haven't watched any of The Simpsons in a while. Let's check it out and see.
Oh my goodness!
Okay, so it's no new big statement to say that The Simpsons is trash now. Everywhere you look, you'll find a new video essay on it like, hey, let's talk about how The Simpsons didn't just die, it was murdered diddly murdered. Hi, I'm Tonal Logan. Sorry. But goddammit, I'm angry. I was on the trip recently and the place I was staying at had The Simpsons on one of the channels, and I got in that kind of zoning out mood where you just kind of want to sit in front of the TV, and I watched it. It's been a long while since I've given up on that show and I had no idea what to expect, but, well, here we are. Needless to say, I wasn't impressed. The Simpsons is one of those shows that, while good and even necessary in some ways to entertainment at large, can only live for so long before it becomes the thing it hates, before it becomes so awful. Oh wait, what am I talking about again? Television has always been one of those things that it's like a sort of paradox of culture. What I mean by this is its purpose is to represent our culture, as in showing things that the public likes and using language that the public likes and like reporting on current events, like a reflection of the viewer, as it has to be to stay relevant, people to continue watching and to even gain trust from people. But at the same time, it's run by people that try to project their own values in an effort to sway and control the culture, to gain power from it and to just make money. An obvious example of this are the various news outlets, who desperately want us to believe that they're just reflecting what we want, reporting on events when they're clearly running smear campaigns, relying on certain ideologies and the like in an effort to change what people think, while disguising themselves as someone who doesn't do that. But the same thing is seen in a lot of the shows, especially the ones that are shown around the family night entertainment slots, let's say 6, 7, 8 and 9 p.m. Even now you have all your safest, most shallow, obnoxious, obvious, shitty, soulless comedy, complete with laugh tracks and jokes designed for laugh track. It's true that media has changed so much because of the internet, but I still believe that television has stayed the same. And no wonder it's dying. Going back to the 80s, all of those safe shows are still there. They wanted you to believe that they were relatable commentary on a dysfunctional family, but really all of their problems were solved by things that never really challenged them that much. As much as they acted like they covered real issues, they never did anything that stepped away from the safe bubble. Now, it's fine to have a bubbly show that's just there to make you happy. I think it's a pretty important part of media. Some people just like to escape by having really positive pastel colored things, whereas some people just want to have dark jokes to kind of cope with it that way. I know I'm in the second group, but the important thing is to have both of those things represented, and the family slot on TV tries to pretend that the other side, the second part, doesn't exist. And there we have the problem. It really wanted you to believe that it reflected the world, but it was also desperately trying to shape people to match them, ignoring the underbelly of people who couldn't do that, and wouldn't do that, and the people who slip through the cracks. They desperately need help and only get shunned, and eventually they cannot return from the thing that they've become. Eventually they don't want to return. The demand for The Simpsons wasn't this obnoxious loud thing, it was people just quietly suffering in the background, whispering to each other. It's the part of humanity that is buried by these things over and over. But eventually, we see the beginning of a certain dysfunctional family, a really dysfunctional family, on a certain couch. A music network that dedicates itself to anti-establishment, and a new type of media in general. There are a lot more similarities between MTV and The Simpsons than you would expect. So much so that I thought that I might bring it up once or twice throughout this video as a comparison. The first Simpsons episode aired on the 14th of December 1989, and in this short debut, it established many things about itself and its plan moving forward. The first is that it was not like other shows. It was dark and too real in some ways, but knew where to make jokes and where to stop. Second, the jokes it made were particular and personal. It was handcrafted for the show. You could tell that people were specifically making these statements that they wanted to plan out and execute in a particular way. It wasn't just random funny meme on top of random funny meme. Thirdly, it was making cutting current yet timeless commentary, and it wasn't going anywhere. For example, the father that wants to be a good person but takes his frustration out on his kids using violence and does a lot of destructive things that he is too dumb to really understand how to stop, but he's also frustrated because he can tell that there's an issue, but he just doesn't know what to do. The woman who could have been something in her mind and keeps flashing back to it, kind of like a Virginia Woolf character, and kind of resents the people that brought her to where she is, but knows ultimately it was her choice and wonders about it in her own sad melancholy that she tries her best not to let her children see, but sometimes it just happens. And one of the biggest things I think and often overlooked is the fact that they have a baby with them. Now, a lot of people talk about how the Simpsons family don't grow up, they're just where they are. And I would say that with Maggie, I think that's the point. There's a baby growing up in this horrible environment, then it's one of those things where it being implied suits it better, because you can easily just imagine all of the things that Maggie will grow up thinking is normal, but it's actually incredibly toxic, not a good way to view the world. Anyway, she'll have a lot of behavioral issues. There's just a lot of really dark things that are very real, but the fact that they don't outright show you means that they don't really beat you over the head with it. It's just a thing that's happening in the background that a lot of people tend to forget. If there's a child in this environment, there's only a certain amount of time that you can take the child away from it or trying to help the child before a lot of this stuff starts to affect them, and as they get older, it'll be very, very hard to try and get it out of them. And having that at the back of your mind and sometimes forgetting about it but then remembering that it's a terrible thing is one of the reasons why the show is really good. The way that I would like to talk about my praise for the old Simpsons and disdain for the new, I guess you could say, is one of the most basic ways you could do that, and comparing episodes. Now in particular, there are a few episodes that I'd like to compare specifically because they mirror each other with the plot. One of them did a story and it was done really well, and then a couple years later, I don't know whether or not they were just running out of ideas or someone wanted to redo it, but it's a very, very, very similar plot. Might be going over a different person, but it's completely destroyed. You might think I'm exaggerating, but you'll realize I'm not. On the 25th of April 1991, the 19th episode of the second season aired, Lisa's Substitute. This is one of my favorite episodes and one that has been widely praised to this day. It's got heart, the commentary is timeless, and the statements stick with you. It's a perfect example of the substance that the show could have. So it's about a substitute teacher, Bernstrom, who Lisa falls in love with because his presence and the unusual yet helpful teaching methods he uses allows her to have a connection with someone that she feels she needed in her life, and her dealing with the fact that at the end, this is a fleeting blip. Life takes away any comfort just as easily as it gives, but there is a solace that she can take in what she saves from it before it leaves. The mementos, the memories that he can give her before he leaves in a bittersweet ending. See, early Simpsons Lisa is a girl who is stuck, isolated, and alone. She desperately wants to understand herself and why she can't be understood by those around her. She doesn't have something like the internet to find a small community in and feel like she belongs. It's not like she can go traveling on her own. So she's stuck, and her critical and skeptical nature means that she can never really ignore it. So she finally finds this teacher that not only understands her, but helps her try to put the pieces of her life together, and she's overwhelmed. Sure, she calls it love and thinks it's love, but remember, she's like 8, and we as the viewer have more context for what it really is. Nothingness to actually having that connection probably feels so fucking intense to her that it comes across as love. Regardless, we get to see a side of Lisa that is actually really interesting and happy, even if it has a sad ending, and it's great. It's the entire show showing that it has this intenseness that it can convey. It's not just something used for cheap laughs, it has something that it can clearly do things. Meanwhile, Bart wants to be class president, and I'll keep this short. How many times, especially in the 2016 shit show of an election, have you heard that someone's preferred candidate didn't win because not enough people voted? I'm pretty sure a lot of people had that to say. I think this is always going to be a problem, because people kinda suck. And this is a timeless episode in both of the plots, regardless of the context of the year that it came out because of how it was written. It's still something that you can use today for any current example. So Lisa realizes that Bernstrom can't stay forever because he describes teaching as a transient thing. She knows that she is about to lose this rare connection and, desperate, asks him what she can do about it. She receives a piece of paper as he leaves, and he says that she should open it when she's feeling overwhelmed by the ache of isolation. It says, "You are Lisa Simpson." When your life is like Lisa, you question whether or not you are wrong. Maybe you're the one who should really change and everyone else is fine, because it gets to you, especially if you're also ridiculed for it like Lisa is in school. Now, with this message, she has proof that there are others like her. She should power through, keep going, and never forget who you are. Don't lose it, because it's you. And that is the timeless message. Now let's take a look at a modern episode that undoes it all and makes all of it worth nothing. I hate my fucking life. The abomination, the abortion known as Lisa Goes Gaga aired on May 20th, 2012, and was episode 22 of season 23. And I hate every single thing about it. This episode presents Lisa in another situation about being misunderstood and bullied in school. The first big difference is that we're dealing with Zombie Simpsons Lisa and not actual Lisa. Zombie Simpsons is a term that people use to describe modern Simpsons. I think people commonly think of season 8 as the start of the downfall, just for reference, because it's a soulless, shambling corpse that should have stayed dead when it actually died, but it's forced to shamble on to the detriment of media at large, especially the quality of animated shows directed at an older audience. Zombification also obviously affects the characters, making Lisa change from a skeptical, isolated person who just wants to understand herself to woke Twitter and someone who hops from trend to trend and is barely skeptical of any of it. Then Gaga appears, playing herself, and is a magical, whimsical, pandering, current trendy thing that the entire town loved. It seems like a setup for one of those episodes where the skeptical person realizes that everyone is worshipping a false idol and things aren't actually what they seem, and she has to get them to think for themselves, and some like a generic kind of plot like that you've seen a million times before. But it doesn't even give us that. We see Lisa realizing Gaga is a magical, pandering, amazing, trendy person, and everything is okay because as long as you be yourself, all of your problems will disappear, and no one will actually bully you anymore because you're being yourself. Look, with the power of the world's shittiest song, everyone loves her. Now she goes away on a train with magical shoes and rainbows and puppies. Yay for pop stars! Look, I like Lady Gaga, but this is bad. I didn't even mention the shitty random jokes that didn't make sense, like, haha, funny dresses, haha, they're making out on the kitchen table for some reason, and haha, what? So that's one, and okay, it's pretty terrible, but we're not done yet. The standards for this show are so low that if it was represented as a limbo game, the bar would be in the damn ground. I have a couple more examples, and I wanted to bring up a couple more because I like to rub it in. Rosebud and Mo Goes From Rags to Riches are both episodes that deal with an iconic yet mysterious character that is rarely ever given a full story in an episode, and gives you insight to their character through things that are precious to them, especially precious in their childhood. But you guessed it, the Mr. Burns one from the old Simpsons and the Mo one makes me want to go into the Forever box. Rosebud follows Mr. Burns' teddy bear, Bobo, and gives us an insight into his childhood. It's basically an origin story for the damn teddy bear, but it's consistent with Mr. Burns' character because we know Mr. Burns as a decrepit man with outdated and outright strange values and has an addiction to power. He comes across as cold and calculated, so seeing his younger self, especially when he throws away the bear, because he feels like he has to really cement himself as a powerful man, and then regrets it afterwards, is really interesting and makes us think more about what he's really feeling underneath. Now, it's careful not to actually excuse his actions, because he does some pretty fucked up stuff, but this is more of a reason why. It's more of a look into it. And then we get to the part where he realizes that Maggie has the bear and fights Homer. Homer is desperately trying to protect his child, and Mr. Burns really wants to get that side of him back that the bear represents. It shows the different sides of both of these characters, and it shows that maybe sometimes when Mr. Burns seems so cold, that there may be a tragic reason behind it that no one really knows about, and that he's too afraid to share since he doesn't want to risk his cold exterior cracking and showing the weakness underneath. Pretty good. Okay, so Mo has a rag that he sleeps with, and he's a pussy that for some reason goes between old evil Mo and awkwardly softy Mo inconsistently because reasons. Also, the rag's backstory has nothing to do with Mo, it's just some random shit, like one skit after the next that just doesn't really relate. The rag has more backstory than Mo. The rag. Oh, but they give it back to him in the end because it was in the laundry and the whole time, rainbows and happy.
Listen to the grumbling of our stomachs.
The final comparison is not heavy, but it's important. My two favorite segments of the Treehouse of Horror from the older Simpsons are The Shining and Homer Cube. The Shining has some legitimately good scenes, funny commentary on the original story, and good jokes overall. Like the part at the end where Homer and the rest of them are sitting in the snow looking at the TV. Homer Cube is super fucking meta and weird as fuck. I love it. It's not just a style, it's not style of a substance. They use it to be creative and tell a really freaky kind of Lovecrafty story about dimensions and use some animation jokes as a nice touch. Like, I didn't even notice at the time when I was a kid, but this looks like Blender the first time I opened it up and I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing, but at least I can appreciate it now. So the Zombie Simpsons era thing that I want to bring up is the Coraline based segment. I love Coraline. It's one of my favorite animated movies of all time. I love Neil Gaiman. I've watched every single weird video on like Coraline theories and shit. I've watched it. I live there now. So I can say that the look of the segment is really cool. I appreciated it. It looks great, especially as a Coraline fan, but that's it. Nothing else happens. It just goes through the plot and then it ends. It doesn't really have much like The Shining did. This could be said for the entire show now. It used to be about these things coming together to say something and explore something, but now it's, hey, look at this reference. Hey, it's a celebrity playing themselves. The show's animation is definitely slick now compared to what it looked like before. I guess you could say that about everything, but what does that mean if there's no reason to watch it? There's a video by Super Eye Patch Wolf that a lot of you probably waiting for me to mention that goes into detail about why, and though I'm not about to spend a long time recapping that and doing that myself, I am going to go through some of the key points because I think they're important. If you haven't seen his video, I highly encourage you to do so. It really helped me with the structure of video essays as someone who has very little experience doing them and wants to do more. It was something that I really had to try and make a scaffold out of to help me, otherwise this would have been way worse than it already is. So in his video, he uses the IMDb graph on the popularity of The Simpsons to base his argument on, and comments that the fading relevancy of The Simpsons is because it just doesn't really belong anymore. It was born during a time where the society was homogenous and there needed to be a show on national TV that really decried these things. And that's really true, because now on the internet, like I said before, you can find these little communities that do what you want and have a niche that you can get into. But back when society was extremely just one note, it was really hard to do that without trying to physically find these places that you could belong. And the presence of The Simpsons, it wasn't really like anything else. And to bring it back to MTV, because I know I haven't mentioned it yet, you had Beavis and Butthead, you had all of these shows that are very satirical, that had a different type of humor that wasn't seen before. And when you look at MTV now, do you remember Francesca Ram? Do you know about all of the woke SJW shit on there? I don't like to use the word SJW anymore. I think that it's overused, and I really don't like using it a lot, but I don't see how that word wouldn't apply here. The Simpsons isn't doing what I mentioned before to bring it back. It's not trying to catch up. In fact, it seems to actively resent the changes that knocked it off its throne and tries to claw its way back. Sound familiar? Another thing is the laugh track. To me, laugh tracks in comedy are like jump scares in horror. The jump scare is overused, obnoxious, and disrupts any semblance of emotion. It tries to tell you how to feel, like, be scared now, this is a horror movie. Laugh tracks are just here to tell you to laugh, and when the joke reaches its crescendo, and jokes can only really have one type of formula when it's a laugh track. If a show tries to tell me how to feel that obnoxiously, I'm not gonna watch it. Now, before we leave this section, I will talk about one more episode that I love. Not for comparison directly, but just well, I'll get to it. Homer's enemy is about a man named Frank Grimes who goes up against Homer and is ultimately so frustrated that he slips up and dies because of Homer's stupidity. Also, this episode is from season 8. It is ultimately dark, darker than most of the others, and it also has a sense of realness to it. Like, what if a normal person moved to Springfield? How much would these people push them? And the answer is not pretty. He, kind of like Lisa, talks about his experiences with Homer to the others, desperately trying to connect with someone who understands and can tell him why it's this way, why no one here is normal, and why he has to be here. And no one really gets it. He doesn't get the answer. He's alone, and it's too late. This is an episode that would never be in the new Simpsons because it's not covered in rainbows and there's no guest celebrity at the end to make stupid songs about how everything's better. Things don't have an easy solution. In fact, you could say that it's ignoring the underbelly of people silently suffering and wanting to have something more real. This feels like an entirely different world. But obviously, if there's a lot of people who are really big fans of the show and now feel disenfranchised because they can't really watch it anymore, where are they gonna go? This is where things get kind of weird. From Simpsons Wave to aesthetic screenshots to reimagining, so bizarre I don't really understand them. There's really a whole lot more content now that people are making themselves to regain the show that they lost. But there's something else on top of that. Notice how all of these are dealing with old Simpsons and not zombie Simpsons. There's no love for zombie Simpsons with its Flanderization. Oh, I didn't even talk about Flanderization. You know what? Let's not do that right now. Let's not. But these things also have a weird meta-narrative. Super Eye Patchwolf's other video, he mentions that these are almost... It's like the characters are crying out for help, and I would like to take that a bit further. They are almost self-aware, desperate, trying to escape but forced to endure because they know that they're not supposed to be here anymore. And this also means that in some ways old Simpsons never really died. It only looks on if you don't look at the show. But just imagine, if instead of zombifying, The Simpsons was aware of the fact that it wasn't really needed anymore and did a self-aware sort of second chance, where they presented themselves as a show of characters that were slowly becoming more self-aware to the fact that they were in a show and that the show was no longer needed. They're stuck, they can't escape or age or anything, and they know that they're not wanted and don't fit anymore, so they just try to do something else or even just escape in any other way. But the show glitches and warps, and reality itself is broken as they keep doing it, so they're forced to stop what they're doing and just kind of endure, otherwise everything gets broken beyond repair. It's like a sort of Adult Swim, Alan Resnick type of thing that I think would have really fit, and you could have easily gotten the internet involved with different animators and indie creators and everything to really make this unique and different. That would be amazing, but we're never going to get that. Hopefully some show that's on right now realizes when they should stop and then just decide to do this as an experiment or something. Even if it doesn't work out, I'd really like to see it, but that's a long time coming. So, did you keep your eyes on resentful things? Why don't you have a look inside? You'd be surprised at what you find. Oh, me? I'm just going to the tavern.